Yo, this is MegaManFan, and you need to rock and or roll on over to Mr. MegaManFan's YouTube channel, because it's all that rush to make it happen. Peace!
I'm your host, Mr. MegaManFan, and welcome back, Megamaniacs, to the Retro Hunting Adventures, where this week I'm testing out some recent pickups for GameCube and Nintendo Wii U, starting with Bionicle Heroes, which coincidentally came out on both systems. This is the GameCube version, but it was also released on Wii in April 2007. But originally it came out in November 2006 for a wide variety of platforms. GameCube was November 14th, as well as PS2 and Nintendo DS. One day later, Xbox 360, and then it also came out on Windows in a variety of territories at a variety of different dates, the latest of which being in Australia on December 1st, 2006. This is actually my second attempt to acquire this game. If you've been following the Retro Hunting Adventures for a while, you may remember that I picked this one up from a local game shop, and when I got home, I discovered that Bionicle was inside and not Bionicle Heroes. So I had to take it back and say, hey guys, I'm sorry to return this, but unless you have the right disc that goes with this game, I can't take it. And of course, they didn't have it because somebody else probably got Bionicle with Bionicle Heroes in it and vice versa. So there was nothing they could do. And it's a somewhat understandable mistake, so I wasn't really that mad about it, and they gave me full credit back. So I got something else and went home happy, but it's just one of those things that happens sometimes when you get multiple games in the same franchise, and used game stores try to match up the box and the disc and keep them separate until they're sold, but then mix them up when they put them back together at the time of purchase. It's not a perfect world. None of us can expect it to be. And Bionicle Heroes was not a perfect game either. I didn't spend very long on it because everywhere I went, there was a wall locking off or blocking off anything that I could do, and I got tired of that and just decided to move on. So we move on to Casper Spirit Dimensions, first released in 2001 for PlayStation 2 on September 30th, then released on October 15th, 2002 for GameCube, and to this day it's still one of the more readily affordable GameCube games despite recent price hikes. You should be able to find this one for $10 or less. You can shoot energy blasts of some kind. You can shift from first person to third person. And it looks like you can float through walls. So I thought, great, I might actually have some fun with this. And then you get unskippable cutscenes. You have to watch this whole thing, no exception. You can pause, but you can't skip it. And I got tired of that and decided, well, I've tested it. It works. Let's move on to Midway Arcade Treasures 3, which I discovered very much accidentally from an Instagram post that I didn't have because somebody was showing off their Midway Arcade Treasures collection across various platforms. And I was looking at the picture and I was like, well, wait a minute. I have 1 and 2, but I don't have 3. And 3 was released on a variety of platforms as well. Came out on GameCube September 26, 2005, then on PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox September 27, 2005, and October 14, 2005. I believe when I first showed this one off in a mail call or a pickups video, Ryan commented that it had some of his favorite driving games on it, and that may be why I hadn't picked it up before now, because Midway Arcade Treasures 1 and 2 were more focused on shoot-'em-up games and classic platform games and old-school arcade games, and Arcade Treasures 3 is all about the driving and racing games. But Ryan said he was a big fan of these, so I thought, well, hopefully I've made a good choice here by picking this up, and I chose the game Stun Runner because it was something I had a vague memory of being an Atari game, even though it's on a Midway Classics compilation, and I was right. It was released by Atari Games in 1989 and features, quote, a futuristic vehicle which can exceed 900 miles per hour. Holy shit, that's fast. The ultimate goal of the game is to reach the ultimate challenge an endless race filled with surprises where the player must just get as far as possible in the allotted time. And Stun Runner was also released as part of the Midway Arcade Treasures Deluxe Edition for Microsoft Windows, so even if you don't have it on GameCube, PS2, or Xbox, there was another way to play. Now, of all 3 volumes of Arcade Treasures that came out on this generation of consoles, Arcade Treasures 3 got the lowest scores, 65% on GameCube, 66 on PS2, 67 on Xbox, and not all of the versions are straight ports from the arcade originals. Hydro Thunder and Rush 2049 are actually based on Dreamcast releases of those games ported over to various other consoles. Moving on, we have Red Faction 2, which I actually passed up a few times without realizing that I didn't have it, and then I finally saw it at Ben's Game Zone, and I was like, oh crap, this isn't on my list. Maybe I need to get around to picking this up. It is, of course, a sequel to Red Faction, which did not come out on GameCube. It came out on PS2, Windows, Macintosh, Nokia N-Gage, believe it or not. So there's one for stop skeletons from fighting. He could try Red Faction on his Nokia N-Gage. But this is Red Faction 2, which features local multiplayer, deathmatch, Bagman, Arena, Capture the Flag, and Regime in an unlockable mode, and can be played across a selection of 40 levels, each with destructible walls. And about those destructible walls, I found myself getting very annoyed very quickly in this first section of Red Faction 2 because it looked for all the world like I had destroyed one of those destructible walls, but then I hit an invisible barrier trying to move through the wall to the next area of the game, and no matter what I did, that invisible wall would not go away. And since today was a day for testing games as opposed to solving games, I just decided it was time to move on and test something else. But I did enjoy this brief experience with it enough to come back to it again later, and it seems to be an interesting story about nanotechnology and military weapons and things being stolen, so obviously some Metal Gear Solid influence there. This is Surf's Up for GameCube, which, as you might expect, is based on the movie of the same name, which I have to admit I have never watched, but it seems to be about a penguin who loves to surf. So the game came out in 2007 at the same time as the movie. They must have been working on both of them simultaneously. And like our opening title this week, this came out on both GameCube and Wii, but the Wii version was only released in the European Union, so unless you have a chipped Wii or a modded Wii of some kind, you're probably not playing that version. You're playing the GameCube version if you live here in the United States. But wherever you live, more power to you, because it did come out on a variety of things. Nintendo DS, Game Boy Advance, Microsoft Windows, so on, so forth. I have to assume that means the movie was a fairly big success. Let's see what it says about the movie on Wikipedia. It cost $100 million to make and made $149 million at the box office. So I would call that a modest success at best. When you consider that box office receipts are usually split 50-50 between the movie theater and the movie studio, they might actually do a little Hollywood math and call that one a flop because they didn't make back what they spent. But with home video sales and rentals and whatever else, maybe they broke even or came out ahead. I really don't know, and I won't speculate about that any further. Anyway, this game, you don't really so much surf as you do race. It's more of a wave race style game where you're maneuvering through gates, which are giant chunks of ice that are in various shapes, and you're picking up items along the way that look like glowing snowflakes, and you can do tricks for extra points. But yeah, it's more of a racing game than a surfing game, even though ostensibly you're riding a wave and the wave is right there alongside you. You're just kind of racing here. So if you like a racing game, it seems like a competent racing game, and Again, it's one of the less expensive GameCube games right now, despite the pandemic price hikes that we've all been living with. I was able to pick this one up for under $10, so maybe you just want a wave race style game with some decent animation and a movie tie-in, in which case this is the game for you. Next up is Alice in Wonderland for Nintendo Wii. Now, if like me, you grew up with a very whimsical and charming Disney animated version of Alice in Wonderland, this is not that. This is the Tim Burton version of Alice in Wonderland from 2010, and this game came out on a wide variety of things as well. Nintendo DS, Microsoft Windows, Zeebo. What the heck is Zeebo? It's a 3G enabled system that was aimed at Brazil and Mexico, so this game got around quite a bit, and it features some very well-known voice actors in both the movie and the game. Mia Wasikowska as Alice, Crispin Glover as Ilosevic, Michael Sheen as the White Rabbit, Barbara Windsor as the Dormouse, Stephen Fry as the Cheshire Cat, and Leo Bill as Hamish Ascot. So if you like the movie, you will probably like the game. Now, as for the controls, I quickly discovered that you need to have a nunchuck plugged into your Wii to be able to play. If there's no nunchuck on the Wiimote, you can't get anywhere. It'll just lock you out. And B, even though it gives you the nunchuck so you can move around with the analog stick, it still has waggle controls, which, if you're familiar with Wii games, you're either going to love or hate. One of the examples here is that when I take the rabbit to follow Alice through this tiny door, he gets to a gate that's swinging back and forth rapidly, and it damages him every time he gets close to it. So what you have to do is Z-lock onto the gate, and then spin the Wiimote in your hand as fast as you can, like you're waving a wand or something, and then you freeze time, and the gates stop moving, and you can pass through them safely. Waggle technology, everybody. Next up, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I don't even know that I really need to explain this game or any of the Metroid Prime games. I feel like they're all certified classics at this point. But briefly, I'll tell you when it was released and where. North America, August 27, 2007. European Union, October 26, 2007. Australia, November 8, 2007. And amazingly, it came out last in Japan, March 6th, 2008. That to me really sets the entire universe on its ear. When do you see a Metroid game that comes out in North America first and Japan last? But they must have had some high hopes for this one, and I believe they were successful in those high hopes because they sold more than 1 million copies of the game, and they even re-released it a couple of years later as part of the Metroid Prime trilogy. This game rocks. It actually adds some new abilities over the previous Metroid Prime games, such as Hyper Mode, which lets Samus use more powerful attacks, and the ability to control Samus's gunship for extra features as well. That's freaking sweet. So I got so invested in this that I actually forgot I was just testing games today as opposed to playing games today. And I ended up cutting this footage short because I played it for like 10 or 15 minutes and I was still recording, and I was like, oh shit, I gotta stop. I got more to do. This game draws you in very quickly. It's one of those Wii games where it doesn't annoy me to use the Wiimote because it makes sense to point and click at the different items that Samus interacts with, and it makes sense to use the analog stick to control the movement around, and it just feels right when you're holding both of them in your hands. It's like that same feeling you get with the Nintendo Switch when you've got a Joy-Con in each hand for certain games that work best with a controller in each hand. It's got that exact same vibe to it. Metroid Prime 3 is one of those games that the Wii does right. I don't even know if I would want it ported to the Switch because I feel like they achieved perfection with this version of it. But perhaps they would. I don't know. They are working on a Metroid Prime 4 though, and they have been for several years now, so that'll come out on the Switch eventually. And it may drop completely at random without any warning, knowing the way Nintendo likes to do things. They don't often give you a lot of lead time anymore. It's like 2 weeks before the game's coming out. Hey, guess what? This will be in stores in 2 weeks. Oh, crap. Oh, well, I guess I better put some money aside for that one. Shoot, I didn't realize it was coming out that fast, but that's what they do. Anyway, Metroid Prime 3, frickin' great game. Have I said that already? I'm going to say it again. Frickin' great game. Can't believe that I got this one out of a retro swap box, but I definitely put something back in that I felt was equivalent in stature and replayability. I put in Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, so I think that's a good retro box swap one for the other. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Yeah. Okay, I gotta stop playing this. We move on to Pitfall on Nintendo Wii. Not Atari 2600 Pitfall. This is a whole new Pitfall just for modern consoles, and it came out on quite a few of them. GameCube, PS2, Xbox, Game Boy Advance, Microsoft Windows, and Wii. So almost any way you wanted to play Pitfall: The Lost Expedition, you could do it. Set in 1935, Pitfall Harry returns to help a beautiful archaeologist rescue her father and thwart the evil Jonathan St. Clair from claiming the lost city of El Dorado. How epic. And apparently he wields magic too. I skipped a lot of cutscenes, so I don't know why his magic hands are suddenly powering up to get into a battle with a roaring, very large cat with giant fangs. It looks like a magical saber tooth of some kind. So I don't know if I'd be trying to fight a saber tooth with my bare hands, even if they were magical. Pitfall Harry is a little more bold than I am. Last but not least, we have Tournament of Legends, and once again, we are back to waggle physics when it comes to controlling a Wii game. Not my favorite thing in the world, not the worst thing in the world either. It's just something you have to live with certain Nintendo Wii titles. This one, you waggle to swing a sword, so if you're doing the combat as you see here in the practice mode, you're only going to be able to block or throw energy blasts unless you wave the Wiimote up and down and side to side. Then it finally lets you swing your sword at your opponent. So be prepared for that if you're playing Tournament of Legends, because there is no other way to do the combat. It came out in Australia July 1st, 2010, the European Union July 2nd, and North America last on July 6th. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is the Retro Hunting Adventures. Thank you for watching. See you next week.